Hello, good evening. I'm Dr. Seema Sinha. Welcome back to my channel, Literati. If you like the material which is uploaded here, please like and subscribe to my channel and leave your comments in the comment section. Today, I will talk about, or rather, I will give a talk. I will upload my ideas on the major symbols in the wasteland. This is the concluding part because I have discussed all the 5 parts in detail. I have discussed the background also of the early 20th century, which leading up to the appearance of The Wasteland by T.S.Eliot in 1922, marking it as one of the greatest events in the realm of English literature and marking The Wasteland as the greatest epic of the 20th century. I've discussed all the various aspects of The Wasteland. I've also discussed the central theme, the paradox, the anomaly, and the contradiction which is present in the idea of death in life and life in death, presenting two opposing ideas on which this great epic is built. As I said, it is a great epic which is built on contrasts and a complexity of ideas. There are a number of themes or symbols or allusions and references which run through the entire epic, giving at first a chaotic impression. But if we look carefully, if we analyze all the different sections, if we look at the images, we find that there is a very visible thread of continuity. And the images are not random, but they appear and reappear, and they sort of provide a sense of a pattern. And it is not entirely a mixture of different chaotic images. T.S.Eliot himself has given the notes explaining the sources because he is a great intellectual, and in his belief there is an ongoing tradition in literature, and so what has been written before or what has happened before in the realm of art, literature, religion, philosophy all inform the present. Tradition never dies. Tradition is something which is continuous. It is an ongoing process, as he has defined it in his great critical essay, Tradition and Individual Talent. And in keeping with his view, with his belief, he goes back to the world of ancient classical wisdom, ancient classical literature, to the world of myths, of medieval legends, to pagan beliefs, to Christian ideas, to Oriental systems of thought. And he brings them together, all these ideas which merged in his great epic, The Wasteland. He has said that there are, or he calls his symbols, incidental symbols in the notes, in the very beginning of the different notes of he gives of the different sections, making or pointing out the references. In the previous lecture which I uploaded, I discussed in detail the central theme, that is of death in life and life in death. Death in life meaning the present wasteland in which the modern day citizens are doomed, or people are doomed, living in a frozen state of emotions, numbness, death of spiritual beliefs, lack of enthusiasm, kind of emptiness, which is emotional, physical, and spiritual. It is a continuous agony which he has defined in all the 5 sections. But opposed to this idea, he has also presented very powerfully the idea of life in death. The very entire epic opens on this belief when he creates the image of Jesus Christ's crucifixion and his resurrection, and also the second coming of Jesus Christ, because the burial of the dead is not the final burial, but Jesus Christ emerges once again, and he makes the or he, to his believers, he answers their faith and their hope with the promise of the idea that something which is beautiful, something which is sublime never dies. So these two ideas of death and life and death are the twin paradoxes, or they are the contradictory ideas which are presented in this entire epic. Today I will talk about the other images which are also present in a continuous sense in all the 5 parts. They are not random images. So the first impression of this great epic, the Wasteland, as being just a sort of a collage or just a collection of chaotic ideas, images, thoughts, is really misleading, because if we look at it carefully, a visible pattern emerges in the images which are presented in different places, in different contexts, exploring different ideas and different situations. And these powerful recurring images are too obvious to be missed. They appear again and again. Number 1 is the idea or the allusion or the reference to the tempest, and in almost always connected with it, the idea of the drowned Phoenician sailor. The second one is that of circle. The circle is a very esoteric image which expresses infinity. It is something which does not have a beginning and an end, and it is present in as a sublime idea or a sublime symbol in many systems of belief. The third one is unreal city. Again, a very expressive, very eloquent image or a symbol of the decadence of modern day civilization. And unreal city appears and reappears, and it creates a picture of the nightmarish world of the 20th century wasteland. Number 4 is the legend of Philomel. This legend is from ancient classical literature, Ovid's Metamorphoses, and this idea of something transforming itself into something meaningful is again presented in the wasteland in different contexts. Number 5 is Rat's Alley, or something which is a dead end, something which is a closed space, something which does not provide any avenue or possibility of escape. 6th is the legend of the Fisher King. This legend comes from the medieval legends and the Arthurian legends, the legend of King Arthur and the search for the Holy Grail, which is the central idea in the Arthurian legends, the Grail, which is supposed to contain the blood of Jesus Christ with its miraculous powers, and the search or the mission or the quest for the Holy Grail. T.S.Eliot calls these symbols incidental, and he has also mentioned 2 books. One is Miss Jessie L. Weston's 1920 book on the legend of the Holy Grail, and this book is From Ritual to Romance. The second one is The Golden Bough, which is written by James George Fraser. It came out in 1890, and it deals with the pagan and ancient fertility rituals, myths, and world of Celtic beliefs and pre-Christian pagan rituals. It is also work on comparative religion. T.S.Eliot accepts, or he rather makes, he mentions these 2 books as providing him a lot of material and a lot of source of information. So let us look at these powerful symbols one by one and see how they appear and reappear, and we sort of keep going and coming back and returning, and it is a sort of a journey through these various symbols that we undertake this voyage through the modern day wasteland. So let us see how the allusions to Tempest, that great Shakespearean romance, appears. In the first part, The Burial of the Dead, lines 47, when Madame Sosostris, that enigmatic modern-day figure who is supposed to have supernatural powers, who has the powers to read the mystical tarot cards which foretell the future, is dealing with a client, and she reads the cards and she says, beware, or one of the cards says that it is a card of the drowned Phoenician sailor. Lines 48 say, those are pearls that were his eyes, look. This is a direct reference to the Tempest, because the Tempest is built on the idea of a shipwreck. And the shipwreck is not an end, but it is a tool, or it is the process through there is a reunion and there is a new beginning. And this shipwreck is not annihilation, but it is a kind of revival, or it is a kind of transition into a new state of emotional happiness, emotional and physical happiness. Because in Tempest, when the shipwreck brings Ferdinand to the island where Prospero and Miranda live, and this shipwreck has been conjured by Prospero so that Ferdinand and Miranda can fall in love. And not only that, it brings his estranged brother also, and all the wounds of the past are healed in a new reunion and a new beginning. Lines 55, again Madame Sosostris, in Madame Sosostris's words, she tells her client, fear death by water. Now, water is also a very powerful symbol which is expressed in this great epic, signifying how there's an absence of water, there is a heap of broken images, there is stony rubbish, there is aridity, and there is a lack of fertility. This idea is turned upside on its head in the fourth part, where water becomes a symbol of, or something which can bring death, because that section, the fourth section is called death by water, which means that an excess of something can lead to annihilation. So even water, which is a symbol of life, when there is a surfeit of it or an excess of it, it becomes synonymous with death. Now, the references to Tempest and to the Phoenician sailor and water are again, or drowning or shipwreck, or something which can bring annihilation, are mentioned again in A Game of Chess, that is the second part, when line 125 says, those are pearls that were his eyes. This is a repetition of line 48 from The Burial of the Dead. The Fire Sermon, that is the third part and the longest part. Line 191, the line is, musing upon the king my brother's wreck, a reference to the shipwreck in the Tempest. 192, and on the king my father's death before him. Again, Tempest. Because when there is a shipwreck, all of them believe that they have lost each other or they have drowned in the storm. But that is not the reality. That is just an illusion which has been created. Actually, this shipwreck is meant to reconcile the two brothers and also to create a happy future in the love of Ferdinand and Miranda, to create harmony. In line 257, in the Fire Sermon, there is a picture of the sordid reality of the modern day London. It is juxtaposed with images from the past. And the line 257 says, this music crept by me upon the waters. This is again a reference to Tempest, because in that great romance, Ariel, who is the spirit who carries out Prospero's wishes, plays a kind of hypnotizing music which seems to come from nowhere, and Ferdinand follows that music, that sound of music, and that music leads him to Miranda. So line 257 is again a reference to the Tempest. The fourth part, with the kind of contradictory image of water, and which is called death by water, lines 312, again bring us back to Phlebas the Phoenician. And it says, Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead. And he is dead and gone underwater. His bones are picked up in whispers by the waves, and there is the deep sea swell and only the cry of gulls. So the image of water, of death by water, of the Phoenician sailor, of tempest, in which water plays a very large role because Prosper and Miranda, they are set adrift by his cruel brother on the sea, and they come to this island in the middle of the sea, and finally it is the sea storm or the voyage of the sea or the shipwreck which reunites everyone and brings it to a happy conclusion. So the image of the tempest and Phoenician sailor and water and drowning appear in lines 47, 48, 55, line 40, 55 in the Burial of the Dead. Again, that is the first part. Second part, A Game of Chess, line 125. The third part, The Fire Sermon, line 191, 192 and 257. And then in the fourth part, Death by Water, in line 312, Phlebas the Phoenician, a fortnight dead, and the cry of gulls. So the first image, the tempest, the symbol, is present in all these different parts, and the repetition is too obvious to be missed. The second image, the second symbol, that is of the circle or the ring, which is an image of infinity without a beginning and an end. It is a very sublime symbol and present in many systems of belief. It has a very deep meaning. Circle or the ring, it appears in the very first part, in the Burial of the Dead, when Madame Sosostris is reading the cards, and she says that she sees the image. Line 56. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. In the Burial of the Dead, that is the second part, this image of the circle appears in line 56. It appears in the fourth part, Death by Water, in line 317, where Phlebas, the Phoenician sailor who has been dead a fortnight and who's now no longer alive, he has passed all the stages of childhood, youth and age, because nothing matters to him. He's beyond all that. And the line is entering the whirlpool. The whirlpool is again an image of something which moves round and round, something which moves upon itself, something which does not have a beginning or an end. In the final part, in line 371, when the nightmarish landscape is described, the last part, what the thunder said, is depicted as a journey through a tortured land, a journey which will finally bring the modern day protagonists or the modern day people who are doomed and damned to live in this modern day hell to a kind of solution if they have the ability to recover it and to heal themselves. And this line is 371, ringed by the flat horizon only. And this is a picture of people who are faceless, nameless, full of hostility, menace, enmity, a kind of restlessness, spiritual, physical and emotional agony, and they have no way of escape because they are moving round and round in a circle, and they are ringed or they are surrounded by a flat horizon. They have no way of escape. So circle or ring and whirlpool, they appear in the Burial of the Dead in line 56. They reappear in Death by Water in lines 317. And finally, this image of the circle or something moving round and round appears in line 371 in What the Thunder Said, signifying something which is infinite, something which never begins or never ends. A circle or a whirlpool or something which moves round is the image of infinity. The third symbol, which is very powerfully evoked, and it is very expressive of the hellish modern day civilization. The condition of the modern day people who are like the doomed souls, the damned souls in Dante's hell. They are trapped in these spaces which T.S.Eliot calls the unreal city. This image of the unreal city, this feeling of surrealism, this feeling of being neither alive nor dead, this image of death in life, it is evoked very powerfully and very, very eloquently, and it is repeated, or the echoes come in many places in the Wasteland. In the very first part, the Burial of the Dead, lines 60 and 61 evoke it very clearly, and the lines are: unreal city under the brown fog of a winter dawn. 60 and 61, talking about the people who have lost all faith, who have lost all energy, who are hopeless, who are without any happiness, any joy, any spiritual sustenance, and they are walking meaninglessly, aimlessly, like strangers to each other in this unreal city. In the fire sermon, in lines 207 and 208, the same line is repeated, the same image of the unreal city. Unreal city under the brown fog of a winter noon. So in the Burial of the Dead, it is the brown fog of the winter morn. In the fire sermon, that is the third part, it is moving further in time, but with the same dismal, dreary, grey, hopeless, meaningless, unreal city, that sense of unreality, surrealism. In line 207 and 208, which say unreal city under the brown fog of a winter noon. In the same section, the fire sermon, in lines 259 and 260, there is a kind of yearning, and there is a kind of juxtaposition of images of the ancient world and the modern day hell. And the lines are from lines 259 and 260. "O city, city, I can sometimes hear, besides a public bar in Lower Thames Street." So the public bar and the Lower Thames Street give a definite location, that is London, but it can be any city, any place which is full of the torment and the agony of the lost souls of the modern day hell who are damned. And in lines 259 and 260, and in this stanza, the images of the past world of Ionian white and gold and a mythical beauty is juxtaposed against the public bar and in the Lower Thames Street, where there is an element of lamentation when one remembers the lost beauty of the past, of the music, of the beauty, of the white and gold and the loveliness. In the last part, what the thunder said, in the fifth part, this image of the unreal city comes again and again. In lines 372, it appears as a tantalizing image. What is that city over the mountains? That city over the mountains may be the holy city, Jerusalem, which is out of reach, which is unattainable. In other words, it is a symbol of faith which has been lost. In lines 374, 375, 376, and 377, the cities are described as a world which is disintegrating, something which is collapsing upon itself. And these lines are in broken words, the lines are broken. Falling towers, Jerusalem, Athens, Alexandria, Vienna, London, unreal. So this unreal city can be any city. It is not only London, but it is present everywhere, where there is this feeling of loss, this feeling of hopelessness, this sorrow, this spiritual and mental and emotional fatigue and agony. The fourth image comes from the ancient world of legends and also the world of ancient classical literature. This is the legend of Philomel, which is from Ovid's Metamorphoses, that great ancient classical work which talks about Philomel and which depicts her, the violence she faces from in the hands of Tereus, her cruel brother-in-law, who ravages her, and then the revenge of her sister Procene, and their final transformation into something beautiful, something everlasting. So this legend of Philomel, it first appears in a game of chess in lines 99, 100, 101 and 102, which depict the transformation of Philomel into a nightingale, something which is melodious, beautiful, harmonious, and which fills the desert air with a beautiful song, and something which is indestructible. This legend of Philomel is taken from Ovid's Metamorphoses, and it comes in lines 99 to 102, making a change from the opening stanzas, which talk about a woman who is sitting in a closed room, which is full of beauty, but which is lifeless. There is a hint of menace in the use of words like synthetic, troubled, confused, and it is a world of artificiality which changes into the beauty of the legend of Philomel. This same image or this idea or this story or this legend or this beauty of Philomel's transformation comes in the Fire Sermon in lines 203, 204 and 205. It comes after the depiction of the vulgarity of modern day life in Mrs. Porter and Mrs. Sweeney and their debased existence. It comes as suddenly upon us, or the mind of the readers or the consciousness of the readers, when the words jug jug, these words jug jug had appeared in a game of chess also, and the song of the nightingale had changed into jug jug, which is the harsh, ugly sound of the modern day world. Now the reference to the change of Philomel appears in 203, 204, 205, when the words like twit twit, jug 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 and so rudely forced, Tyrio, which immediately reminds us of the transformation of Philomel and the violence which had made that transformation when she had changed into a nightingale. The gods had changed her into a nightingale. So this idea of some kind of a violence resulting not in annihilation but everlastingness and beauty in perfection is present in the idea of martyrdom and resurrection, the idea on which this entire great epic opens. This change of Philomel again is repeated in the last part, what the thunder said. In lines 429, when there is a cry of the words, "Oh, swallow, swallow," because Philomel had been changed into nightingale, and her sister Procene, who had taken revenge on her own husband, who had expressed her love and solidarity and sisterhood for her sister, she had been transformed into a swallow. So the reference is very obvious. And in lines 429, this is the final stanza of this great epic, and this swallow swallow comes upon suddenly in 429, because this entire stanza comes after it is the 8th stanza, it is the 9th stanza after the 8th stanza, which talks about Datta, Devadam and Damyata, and which also express the benediction which will come from ancient wisdom. This 8th stanza, which expresses the sublime idea of Datta, Devadam and Damyata, is the 8th stanza of What the Thunder Said. And the 9th stanza, where the poem, the great epic ends, is full of a cacophony of voices, and many images merge here together. The images which have been present in this entire great epic: the image of the Fisher King, the image of the doomed souls from purgatory, of course the image of Philomel, the French sonnet, the Spanish tragedy, and finally the benediction of Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So the Legend of Philomel as an image, it appears and reappears in a game of chess, line 99, 100, 101, 102, in the Fire Sermon 203, 204, 205, and finally very significantly in the 9th stanza, or the last stanza of What the Thunder Said, which is the final stanza of this great epic, in merging with other images from the Fisher King, from the nursery rhymes, from purgatory, from French sonnets, from Spanish tragedy, and finally the ultimate answer to all the confusion and the confusion leading up to a final answer. The 5th image, which appears many times, is of the rat's alley. That is a closed space, somewhere which does not give you any possibility of escape, a sense of closeness, a kind of feeling of being trapped. Rat's alley, it first appears in a game of chess in lines 115 to lines 116. The lines are: I think we are in rat's alley where the dead men lost their bones. So a kind of a sordid, dismal, dreary and hopeless image. It appears again in the Fire Sermon, lines 194, 195, and bones cast in a little low dry garret, rattled by the rat's foot only year to year. So a game of chess and the Fire Sermon repeat the image of the rat's alley and of death and of bones, of closed space, of an impossibility of escape, of a dead end. Now the 6th symbol, which is again very powerful, and it has a lot of connotations, because the legend of the Fisher King is from the medieval legends of King Arthur and his knights and their quest and their mission. And the Fisher King is a symbol of a king, or the story of a king who had lost his capacity, who had become impotent, who had become invalid because of a wound, but he was finally healed by getting the right answers to the right questions. And it is the knight Percival from King Arthur's court who comes to his devastated land, to the land of the Fisher King, and heals him. And after that wound is healed, the lands revive, and there is harmony and peace and fertility in his wasted land. So this image of the Fisher King, of a king being incapacitated, of his lands being ruined, of being helpless, unable to do anything, is presented again and again. And in his image of a kind of resurrection coming out of waste is also a hint or a clue to the final solution or the final resolution on which the wasteland ends, that the right questions and the right answers will heal the modern day wasteland. And the right answer is, of course, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. The answers which will come from the past, from the world of ancient wisdom, from something which will be recaptured, something which is not dead and gone, because something which is beautiful never ends. There is no, there's a sense of revival. And this legend of the Fisher King from the Arthurian legends, it is present in the Fire Sermon, where lines 189 talk about the Fisher King. While I was fishing in the Dull Canal on a winter's evening behind the gas house. Only the ancient land has been transferred into the modern day land, modern day scenario, the modern day world. But one thing is common, that they're both wastelands, they're both devastated. And there is a sense of hopelessness, because when the Fisher King was unable to look after his land, he spent his time fishing and just reviewing about his inability to do anything. So this sense of hopelessness is present in the Fire Sermon, in the depiction of while I was fishing in the Dull Canal on a winter's evening behind the gas house. Gas house, something ugly, something which does not have any beauty, something which is sordid. So the image of the legend of the Fisher King as an image appears in the Fire Sermon. It appears in What the Thunder Said, in the last part, the last stanza, the 9th stanza. I sat upon the shore, fishing with the arid plain behind me. Shall I at least set my lance in order? This is creates an element of perplexity, an element of confusion, a sense of lack of direction. Like I said, this last stanza, this 9th stanza of What the Thunder Said, it ends with a cacophony of voices coming from the Fisher King, from Dante's Purgatory, from the Legend of Philomel, from the Spanish tragedy, from a French sonnet, from a modern day nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down, falling down. It all merges together, the chaotic, the chaos, the confusion, the kind of cacophony into the final answer, which puts everything in its place, and the invocation of Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That is the answer. So, but the legend of the Fisher King is one of the powerful symbols depicting in the legend the possibility of revival and resurrection with the right answers, which is the idea behind this wasteland, because in the end we find that the right answers there, of the mantras which come are from the ancient wisdom, and of course the invocation of Shanti, 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 and the benediction of what the thunder said, that is Datta, Dayavadham and Damyata. So these 6 images from the Tempest, from the idea of a circle, sublime, infinite, of the unreal city depicting the modern day wasteland, the horrific nightmarish world, the doomed people, and the legend of Philomel talking about resurrection and beauty and transformation, Rat's Alley speaking of a dead end, the impossibility of escape, a sense of being trapped, of bones in a dry garret, and something sordid, slimy, dirty, rat's feet. 6, the legend of the Fisher King from the Arthurian legend, which I said it points out to the heartwarming or uplifting idea, or the sublime idea of getting or coming to a rejuvenation or a resurrection or a revival, just like the devastated and the infertile lands of the Fisher King had been restored to fertility. So these are the 6 images, apart from the central theme of death in life and life in death, which I've analyzed in detail, which these 6 images or the 6 symbols, which T.S.Eliot calls incidental, are the thread of continuity which bind all the sections together. Another point which I want to make, which also creates a kind of pattern in this great epic, a kind of harmony of ideas, is the presence of the women in different contexts, in different places, in the different sections. But the presence of women is very, very powerful. We find the reference to it in the Burial of the Dead, in the very first stanza, where the poet's voice says, "Mary, Mary, hold on tight." In the same section, one of the most famous images in the realm of English poetry, in the second stanza, the image, the tender image, evoked with such softness and a kind of sensuousness, is the image of the hyacinth girl. In the third stanza, contrasting with the tender image of the hyacinth girls with her hair wet and a kind of overwhelming of feelings, is the sordid image of Madame Sosostris. She is a figure which does not inspire any kind of feeling, because she is obviously a person who is a fraud, and she has a bad cold which takes away any kind of mysticism which she might have, because she's just an ordinary person. And then these three references to women are quite significant in the Burial of the Dead. In the second part, A Game of Chess, the entire section itself opens with the image of a woman sitting on a very ornate chair, like a burnished throne, and an air of anticipation, a sense of waiting, and the title, A Game of Chess, refers to a kind of a game of seduction. It refers to a play by Middleton, and the first long stanza of a woman sitting still in a room which is full of beautiful objects, but which is without any movement, and there's a hidden menace because their words are synthetic, troubled, confused, and the stillness and the lifelessness of the room and the sculptures and the beautiful artifacts is emphasized. This entire section, it is replete, or it is concentrates on women only, because after the first long stanza and transitioning into the Legend of Philomel and the other voices which come in from different directions, the broken lines and the sentences, it seems that it is always the voices of women who are faceless and nameless, but they seem to be women. They are nagging voices, they are voices questioning, there's a kind of neurotic state, there's a repetition, there is a boredom and monotony, and words like "I shall let my hair down so," and it seems that it is always the women who are present. And then the last part of A Game of Chess ends in a very concrete situation where we hear women talking, the lower class women in a lower class setting, representing the modern day quality of life, the sordid quality, the debased quality. And the women, we hear the voices, but the women are given names in this section. They are Lil and Mary and Lau, and these women are loud and vocal, and they are very strong in their opinions, and they are all women. So in A Game of Chess, I think it is very obvious that it is the presence of the woman which is the most prominent fact about it. And then in the fire sermon, again the very famous image from modern day poetry, the image of the typist who represents the modern generation leading a life which is like a blank, physically and emotionally. She's like the human engine. She has nothing to look forward to. She has no enthusiasm for life because there is no aim in her life, and her life just goes, it drags from one day to another without any significance. In the very first stanza of the fire sermon, the nymphs are evoked. The nymphs are symbols of beauty, of feminine beauty. In the first stanza. In the third stanza, the long third stanza, the detailed picture of the typist and her life and her day and her evening and the hopelessness and the abject blankness of her life, the emptiness of her life is very powerfully expressed. In the fourth stanza, the image of the typist merges into the image of a upper-class woman, but she also has no deep feelings, she has no emotions, she has nothing to look forward to. And the reference is to The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith, and the lines are, "When a lovely woman stoops to folly." In the same section, the fire sermon, lines 279 and 289 talk about Queen Elizabeth and Leicester, creating an image of romance which contrasts with the first part of this stanza, which talks about the River Thames as full of oil and tar and drifting logs. But the same stanza, line 279 to 289, talk about the beauty of the River Thames, of the loveliness of the barges, of the swift movement of the wind, of the water, and the image of Queen Elizabeth and Leicester. So the women have a very powerful presence apart from the symbols. The women, right from Mary to the Hyacinth girl to Madame Sosostris, to the woman sitting and waiting in a game of chess, to the voices of the woman in the bar, Lau and Lil and May, and then in the fire sermon, the nymphs, the image of the typist, the lovely woman of the upper class society, and Queen Elizabeth and Leicester. So I hope I have made myself clear. This is the concluding part. This is the final part of the Wasteland, where the images, the prominent images and some of the allusions have been discussed. Number 1, Tempest. Number 2, Circle. Number 3, Unreal City. Number 4, The Legend of Philomel. Number 5, The Image of the Rat's Alley. Number 6, The Legend of the Fisher King. And the presence of the woman in a very powerful and a very eloquent manner. So I think I've discussed the Wasteland. I hope it's useful to you and you find enough material to interest you and use for your reference. If you think the material important enough, and if it has managed to give you new insights into the Wasteland. A great piece of literature is always open to interpretations, and new insights and new ways of reading it is a very creative effort, and that is the beauty of literature, that we can analyze it in according to our own reading of it and make our own interpretations. So I hope my detailed analysis of the Wasteland has given you some new reference points. Thank you very much.